Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ideas Factory. I'm Natma and with me is Professor Harsh Pant. If we look at the happenings around the world, it's again being news largely is being dominated uh, by China again. So it's all about China, whether you talk about India-China tension along the LAC, or we talk about the Chinese jets which are buzzing Taiwan, or we talk about the reports of snooping by Chinese firms, or the latest ban on Chinese apps, TikTok and WeChat by America. But other than that, there's also something very interesting that we will be looking at, and which is Germany's announcement of a strategic shift in its policies with its pivot to Indo-Pacific. We'll be looking at that too. But let's look at Indo-China relationship first, Harsh. And we've had the defense minister has made a statement in the parliament as was being demanded by the opposition. They were not satisfied, and then there were further discussions on it. Now, the statements that have come out, or the statement that Rajnath Singh made, even after that, where are we right now as far as India-China relationship goes? Because there are latest reports that some of the PLA troops are blocking some points, the patrolling points in eastern Ladakh. Rajnath Singh made it very clear that nobody can stop us from patrolling these areas. He's also made it very, very clear that China has illegally occupied about 38,000 kilometers in Ladakh, and no one should have any doubt about our determination to protect borders. So all this has been said, but the situation on the ground remains more or less the same.
Yes, I think we are still waiting for that major corps commander level meeting that is supposed to happen, and that was the second. I think the natural point of culmination emerging from the foreign ministers meeting last week. So I think we are still in the phase where the operationalization of the 5-point agreement between the Indian foreign minister and his Chinese counterpart has yet to come out clearly. So that during that process we have had, as you mentioned, the Indian defense minister's statement, as well as a lot of things happening on the ground. So I mean, what seems to be happening is both sides are trying to position themselves for every eventuality, and diplomacy and military engagement and military posturing is going side by side, because I think there is a realization on both sides that they need some ground level advantage to take the diplomatic conversation forward, or to have any leverage in that diplomatic conversation. So I think the idea that you can have diplomacy on the one hand being separated from the larger ground level operational and tactical realities, that has come to an end. What we are witnessing now are both countries militarily posturing, as well as trying to find that limited space that is available to them to take the diplomatic conversation forward. And I don't think there is any doubt that the conversation, that space for that conversation is becoming tighter by the day because of what is happening on the ground. If you have the kind of mobilization that we have seen both on the Chinese and Indian sides, if you see the kind of military posturing that we have seen from both sides, I think it's very clear that there is a lot of tension on the ground. The LAC remains very, very tense and hot. And as we have discussed in the past, my own sense is that this is going to be the new normal along the LAC. But of course, India would like, and the Chinese diplomats have said that they would like, at least ostensibly, to find a diplomatic solution to this problem. So when you hear some of the statements that come out from the Indian government, from the Chinese government, they often look contradictory. They often look, as if they're talking, different things at different times to different audiences. But I think they are also trying to figure out what is the best possible way of moving forward at a time when they have to keep on militarily defending their positions, as well as keeping that limited window for diplomacy open. It's a tough call for policymakers, but I think that's the way it's going to be for the foreseeable future, I'm afraid.
Yes, and it's going to be a long haul, as some of the Chinese think tanks or policy institutes have also pointed out. And when you look at all the steps that India took That is happening all around the world now. If we talk about the US, after India, in fact, following in India's footsteps now, the US President Donald Trump has also banned TikTok and WeChat. There's a lot of protest. China has called it US bullying. The companies are going to fight it legally too. But nevertheless, TikTok and WeChat cannot be downloaded by US citizens. Now, China is calling it a bullying by the Americans. But what does this show really, that the rest of the world also will probably eventually or must close their tech ranks and protect their digital flanks? Because this is the snooping or using these apps also as weapon is increasing by the Chinese government.
Yes, I think, in some ways, India seems to have been at the vanguard of this new shift, because India was the first country to do it. Of course, we have our own bilateral reasons for doing that, given what is happening on the border, given that we wanted to show our displeasure. But I think there is a larger global concern about Chinese technologies, about Chinese companies, and there is a strong pushback that is emerging. America, of course, had started this conversation much earlier. So the trade and tech conflict that we have often talked about between China and the US is now coming to a point, especially given American elections, is now coming to a point where I think Americans have taken, or American policymaking establishment seems to have taken a decision that a hardline approach on this is necessary, that they need to draw some red lines, and they need to protect their own technological superiority. Because China, of course, is known for using every avenue possible for geopolitical purposes, and technology, as we know, is becoming the new fault line in global politics. Now, the WeChat and TikTok thing is interesting because the WeChat ban, I think, comes into play just by Sunday, in a matter of hours, in fact,
Yes.
from now.
Yes.
But TikTok will take some time, and TikTok, there is also negotiations are going on between Oracle and TikTok. So what happens if an American company actually ends up buying or ends up in a partnership with TikTok? Whether that would assuage Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump has seemingly indicated that he might be happy with that outcome. So TikTok technically has till November the 12th to take the final call, when actually downloading of TikTok would be banned in the US. So in that sense, I think there is some space there as well. But the Chinese are indicating that they are not very keen on that kind of a deal. So it's again very interesting with how far the Chinese would go. Whether if they see it primarily as an economic problem, then I think they should have no problem in Oracle buying it, because after all, that's the logic of the market. Absolutely. But if they believe that this is a show of strength by the Americans, then the Chinese will put pressure on TikTok and make it a case that no, this is a Chinese company. We will stand our ground. We will not let Oracle buy it, or Oracle have a partnership with you. So I think these are, I think this will lay the groundwork of what might happen in the future. But of course, as you point out, this is a larger issue about how Chinese companies use user data. What are they doing with it? How far they can use it for, in collusion with the Communist Party of China, the Chinese government. And I think what other countries can do and not do. And of course, this week's revelations about the scale and scope of Chinese snooping around the world further aggravates this tension. The reports that have come out that the Chinese have been snooping around the world. And in fact, in India, everyone from a lower level panchayat officer to the prime minister onwards, everyone is being looked at. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. So if the Chinese state in collusion with certain Chinese companies, Chinese technologies can allow this thing to fester to this scale, then this will pose and has been posing enormous constraints on the ability of other actors to respond. And I think the pushback has been in place, or we were all waiting for this kind of a pushback to happen for a while now. So finally, I think the space or the world is getting ready to do something about it. Whether or not they go all out remains to be seen.
Yeah, like you pointed out, that if it is just for economic reasons, China should not have a problem in Oracle having a deal with this company. But the big question is TikTok and WeChat probably, and many other apps like them, have been used as weapons, or have been weaponized, converted into weapons for a 21st century tech war. And how credible is that? And China is also threatening with countermeasures to safeguard the legitimate rights of the Chinese companies. So we are yet to see how will this unfold. You pointed out about the snooping that the Chinese companies have been doing here in India, about 10,000 people, which includes politicians too, and that is a serious concern. The Zenhua data company, but China has probably said that it is a private company and we cannot do much about it. So even though we have lodged a complaint very strongly, the MEA has also made a statement and lodged a complaint. Nothing probably is going to happen on that front. Do you think we can expect anything out of China?
I don't think so. See, I think what the problem here is, again, it comes back to this fundamental question of trust. And the trust is dissipating so rapidly when it comes to China that anything they say, of course, will not be taken at face value. And we will assume, and every government will assume the worst, because that lack of transparency, which had been previously been an irritant, now is the fundamental question, that if you don't trust the Chinese government, if you don't trust what they say, because they say one thing and they do one thing, then on these questions of intelligence and counterintelligence, of course, the trust level is going to be even lower. In some ways, it's not surprising that counterintelligence operations or intelligence operations are happening in India or in other countries. After all, that's what intelligence agencies are for. It's just the scale and scope and the methods that are used. It's not a straightforward method that you have an intelligence agency that does its work, that prepares dossier, for example, on various individuals. It's the interlinkage between Chinese companies, Chinese tech space, Chinese government, and that there are no boundaries here, there are no red lines here that make it very difficult for other countries to respond, and therefore the relationship becomes quite uneven. And when there is no reciprocity in the relationship, then I think the challenge arises. How do you respond to this challenge?
Yes. And like we've been discussing, China has opened many fronts simultaneously. So look at Taiwan. There has been a visit by a US envoy to Taiwan, but then China started flying warplanes, apparently 18 warplanes were being flown by China. And the jets are buzzing Taiwan. There has been a complaint. It is conducting military exercise near the Taiwan Strait to protect its sovereignty, so-called protecting its sovereignty. Now, the relationship between Beijing and Washington are already strained and at an all-time low. And this visit by the US envoy, how do you see this? Because the previous administration, Washington's previous administration, have kind of balanced this and maintained the balance as far as Taiwan and China is concerned. But now the visit by the US envoy was bound to ruffle feathers, and that's what has happened. So it also shows that US is going all out now.
Yes, I think the Taiwan question is becoming more and more important in the US-China discourse, partly as a result of the larger issues, fundamental problem that is emerging in the US-China relationship. As the US-China relationship goes through a phase of decline, or goes through a phase of turbulence, Taiwan question will become more prominent. It has already become very prominent. So you have one of the senior most members of the State Department visiting Taiwan, first visit of this scale of an official of this level in a matter of decades is quite significant. It's a message that Taiwan question remains very important for the US. And of course, Trump administration has been expanding the scope of selling weaponry to Taiwan. One of the most significant packages was announced under Trump administration, one of the largest, in fact, in recent memory. So clearly there is, the Trump administration in particular views Taiwan as one leverage point. But also, I think the Taiwanese government, views, as the relations between Beijing and Taiwan and Taiwanese government has soured. I think Taiwanese government is also keen that Washington, that their engagement with Washington and other countries in the region becomes much more significant. So there is that question that what China has done, for example, in Hong Kong, has had a very massive impact on Taiwan, which believes in democracy, which believes in a different model of political system. I think once you see what one country, two systems model has been the way it has been appended in the case of Hong Kong. I think those who believe in Taiwanese democracy would never be able to look at China and the possibility of engaging with China in the same way as they used to do it before. So I think the stakes are getting higher. And for
Yes.
China, also the stakes are getting higher. I mean, it was, excuse me, 18 jets yesterday. On Friday, 19 jets on Saturday. So they are going all out in projecting their military prowess in a
Yes,
way that
the
perhaps is a
problem is
signal
that
to
China has forever been considering our sovereign Taiwan as a breakaway province, and right now China is just so agitated with this visit that a rather filmy dialogue came out from the spokesperson of the Defense Ministry spokesperson. And while I was reading it, I was very impressed by this dramatic dialogue. It says, "Those who play with fire will get burnt." So it's actually threatening US of repercussions. And so you can see China is out threatening everyone everywhere.
Yes, I mean, this looks like someone from Global Times is writing their
Yeah.
messages. But yes, I mean, I think again the vocabulary, the messaging is of a country. It seems, for a country of China's size, for a country of China's claim, the claim that they have already arrived as a rising power. This is not a language of a country that is at ease with itself.
Mhm.
This is the language of a country that is probably perturbed by what is happening around it. And I think, if you look
And
around China,
pretty unsure and insecure of its position.
absolutely. And I think that is, that creates this fundamental problem of how do you assess what China is doing, what it is doing? Is it because of insecurity? Is it because of the sense of grievance that has been perpetuated over the years by the Chinese government's nationalist narrative? Or is it because of its strength? And I think, to understand and to respond to China, you also need to understand the source of where the Chinese anxiety is coming from. And I'm afraid, I don't think we have a good answer to this. And therefore, all the governments are grappling in the dark
Yes,
with
and
an adequate
we
policy
see a
response.
similar strained relationship between China and the EU. And Germany, which maintains the relationship with China, is also kind of fed up now because the announcement of the new policy and a strategic shift and a shift, the pivot shifting to Indo-Pacific, which is in accordance with the other European Union countries like France. That itself is a big announcement by Germany, and it's very significant.
Very significant for various reasons, I think, because Germany is a country that does not really is prone to making dramatic statements, especially of
Absolutely.
geopolitical kind.
Mm-hmm.
And so to announce an Indo-Pacific strategy and to make it very clear in terms of in terms of the way they are phrasing it about international order, about how they see the rule of law, and I think the very fact that this is an area, if you think about the maritime space in Indo-Pacific, this is not naturally a terrain where Germany would be very confident. France, of course, has territories. France, of course, has a history of dealing with it, especially in the post-Second World War phase. But Germany has been very, very cautious. And its ties with China, economic ties are booming. It is one of the largest economic partners of China in the European Union. So for it to make this transition in itself is a very big statement of intent that I think the relationship with China is coming to a point where it is probably at an inflection point. And they do see this as a big shift in the way the world is looking at China and the world is looking at EU. So after France, Germany becomes the second country. And remember now, two most important countries in Europe, and we are not including United Kingdom here. If you're just looking at EU, Germany and France are the anchors. Now they have pivoted towards Indo-Pacific in a significant way. And they have pivoted in a manner that I don't think helps China because, of course, France has openly said that the era of naivete vis-a-vis China is over. Macron's famous statement. But Angela Merkel, of course, is more cautious. She has always believed in this policy of engagement and trade with China. And that seems to be coming to an end, not simply because Merkel's own term is coming to an end, but also I think the larger mood in Europe has soured vis-a-vis China. We have seen the visit of the Chinese foreign minister did not go down very well at all In fact, smaller countries in the region were more anxious, and they came out very, very strongly against some of the statements that were made. So I think the larger mood has soured. And Germany's position, Germany's pivot to India in Indo-Pacific is a major statement of intent. And my sense is that, that the message to China is very clear that the West will no longer take it lying down just because China is such a big economic player. West will also respond by drawing some red lines, and West will also respond by making it very clear to the Chinese that might is not right. So therefore, I think we will see a lot of shift in the European position. But how this gets actually operationalized, it still remains to be seen. Absolutely. I mean, European Union has come out with a statement. Germany and France have come out with their own statements. But what happens on the ground is still not readily evident in terms of the shift, in terms of force postures, in terms of episodes and issues on which European Union and European powers will take a stand.
Well, it's very, very significant and clearly signals the end of patience with China. Like you said, not only Germany and France or European Union, but many other countries. And in a way, the entire world is dealing with China and signaling that enough is enough. And right now, the relationship between China and the rest of the world is seeing a new decline, and it's soured in many places, whether it's US or it's India, bilateral relation, or the EU. But we have just this much time on this episode of the Ideas Factory. Next week, we'll see you again, and probably it'll be a lot more about China and its policies. So see you next week.